When we're in the midst of a problem, we know the rules of engagement. We know how to defend, how to hide, and how to survive. But when things go well, the old defenses become obsolete. And well, that creates a profound sense of psychological vertigo. We ruin the moment not because we hate happiness, but because we are terrified of the silence that comes when the fighting stops. We find a strange, twisted security in the predictable low, rather than risking the unpredictable high. But you see, this isn't just a quirk of your personality or a flaw in your character. Profoundly, there is a deeper, more primal mechanism at play, a biological tether that links your sense of safety to your level of stress. To understand why your brain views joy as a threat, we have to look at the ancient wiring, right? That prefers a known cage to an unknown sky. Gentle, measured tone. Ladies and gentlemen, consider the idea that each of us carries a hidden setting within our psyche, an internal thermostat for joy. Thoughtful, slightly academic. Psychologists often refer to this as, the upper limit problem. Philosophical, steady pace. Just as a thermostat in your home regulates the temperature to keep it within a narrow, predictable range, your mind regulates how much success, love, and abundance you are allowed to feel before it decides the room is getting too hot. When things start going remarkably well, perhaps you found a partner who truly sees you, or you finally hit a streak of creative brilliance. The mercury begins to rise. Bright, but calm. For the conscious mind, this is a moment of triumph, right? Lower voice, slightly ominous. But for the subconscious, this heat feels like a fever. It is unfamiliar, deeply analytical. And in the primitive architecture of the ego, unfamiliar is, it's synonymous with dangerous. To bring the temperature back down to a level of discomfort that, strangely, feels safe, your mind triggers cooling behaviors. Empathetic, observational. This is why, after a perfect day, you might suddenly find yourself picking a fight over nothing. Gentle, understanding. This is why, after a professional breakthrough, you might spend the weekend spiraling into a localized depression or paralyzing anxiety. Enlightened realization. You see, you are intentionally creating a breeze of negativity to counteract the warmth of your own expansion. Serious, poignant. You are trying to return to the baseline of struggle that you have mistaken for your identity. Reassuring, soft. I want you to realize, ladies and gentlemen, that this isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It is, it's a misguided protective mechanism. Deeply philosophical. Your ego isn't trying to ruin your life. It is trying to preserve the only version of you it has ever known. Slightly somber. It views this new, high-level happiness as a threat to your very survival, because it doesn't know who you are without the weight of your burdens. But if our mind is so desperate to keep us in the cold, how do we begin to turn the dial up without triggering an internal alarm? Warm, pensive. How do we convince our nervous system that it is actually safe to be happy? Impactful, very slow. Because as it turns out, the thermostat isn't just about what you have. It's about how much you believe you deserve. Awestruck, lingering. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable realization of all. One that changes everything we think we know about our own worth.
Ladies and gentlemen, you see, to dismantle a system that has been running for years, we cannot simply rely on willpower. We must become the architects of our own emotional landscape. If your internal thermostat has been set to struggle for so long, You cannot simply flip a switch and expect your psyche to cooperate. You must rebuild, the very framework of how you experience joy. The first pillar of this new architecture is what we call the sacred pause. Whispering. This is that thin, quiet space between a feeling and an action. When you are in the middle of a beautiful moment and you suddenly feel that familiar, itchy impulse to self-sabotage, perhaps an urge to pick a petty fight with your partner or a wave of unexplained anxiety after a promotion, you must pause. Firmly, in that moment, do not react. Gently. Instead, name the sensation. Profoundly. Speak it into existence. I am hitting my upper limit. Empoweringly. By labeling the feeling, you move from being a victim of the impulse to being its observer, right? You are acknowledging that the discomfort you feel isn't a sign of impending doom, but a sign that you are growing. But naming the limit, well, that is only the beginning. Warmly, to truly change, ladies and gentlemen, we must practice the art of conscious expansion. Wisely. When you find yourself in a moment of genuine peace, your instinct will be to look away, to find the catch, or to distract yourself. I challenge you to do the opposite. Slowly. Stay in that positive moment for 60 seconds longer than feels comfortable. Steadfastly. If you feel the urge to check your phone or bring up a problem, resist it. Soothingly. Let the warmth of the moment soak into your nervous system. Analytically, you are essentially recalibrating your brain, teaching it that it can handle the weight of happiness without collapsing. Finally, we must perform a radical reframing of what it means to be safe. For many of us, chaos has been our only constant, and therefore it is the only thing that feels familiar. We have been conditioned to believe that peace is merely the terrifying silence before a storm. But that is a lie told by a tired mind. You must remind your subconscious, daily and with conviction, that peace is not a precursor to disaster. Peacefully, peace is your natural state of being. You are not waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are finally learning how to stand on solid ground. However, even as we build this tolerance for joy, there is a hidden reason why we keep reaching for the thermostat. There is a specific, invisible shadow that follows us into every room, whispering that we are nothing more than actors playing a part we don't deserve. And if we don't learn to face this shadow, we will always be one step away from burning the whole house down. Ladies and gentlemen, you see, we often treat happiness like a trophy at the end of a grueling race, a prize that somehow must be earned through struggle, sacrifice, and endless labor. But what if joy isn't something you achieve, but something you simply allow? The truth we must face, the real truth, is that we don't actually have a problem with being unhappy. We have a problem with being okay. Recalibrating your internal thermostat means shifting your perspective from earning to tolerating. You have spent so much of your life in the cold that the warmth of a good life, well, it feels like a fever. You feel the need to fix it, to bring the temperature back down to the shivering baseline you're used to. But, ladies and gentlemen, you do not have to earn the sun. You only have to have the courage to stand in it. Happiness is not a fragile glass ornament that will shatter the moment you stop guarding it, right? It is your natural state of being when you finally stop putting obstacles in its path. When you stop listening to the shadow that whispers you are an imposter in your own life.
you begin to realize that peace is not a reward for good behavior. It is the foundation of a healthy soul. Ladies and gentlemen, your capacity for joy is a muscle. Like any muscle, it may feel weak or even strained when you first begin to use it. It takes practice to sit in a moment of pure contentment without looking for the crack in the foundation. It takes strength to feel a surge of love or success and not immediately wonder when it will be taken away. It is time to start training that muscle. It is time to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and start realizing that you are finally standing on solid ground. Imagine a life where your first thought in the morning isn't a defensive crouch against potential disaster, but an open-handed welcome to the day's potential. That is what life looks like when the thermostat is recalibrated for abundance. It is a life where you are no longer your own greatest obstacle, but your own most trusted ally. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this journey into the deeper layers of the human experience. If this exploration of the mind resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to Mindscapes Explored and join our community as we continue to map the internal landscapes that define us. Before you go, I want to hear from you. We all have an upper limit, that invisible ceiling where we start to sabotage our own progress. What does yours look like? Have you ever felt that sudden urge to pull away, just as things were getting good? Share your stories in the comments below. Gently, let's foster a connection and learn from one another's shadows. Until next time, be kind to your mind.